I always love a new map. That joy you feel exploring a fresh landscape, learning the stories behind every place you go to, gives me the jitters just wondering what I'll find. And today, I get to take the pleasure of experiencing the new map of E-District. Where am I?
Moore, it's time for your intervention.
I told you, the cocaine was for back pain.
Look, Moore, you promised to talk about every Apex map, but you still refuse to talk about one of them.
What do you mean? I've talked about every map until E-District. What map am I missing? Kings Canyon?
No.
Olympus?
No.
The firing range?
What?
Lockout from Halo 2.
Broken Moon!
That isn't a map, that's a metaphor.
You gotta talk about Broken Moon, dude. You promised to do it over a year ago.
Okay, sure, but nobody actually wanted it anyways.
Really?
Broken Moon next.
Feeling excited to see you cover Broken Moon and Encore.
When can we have a video of these but with Broken Moon?
Can
Second
someone
phase.
explain why Broken Moon is
Make
a bad
that
cover
Broken
map?
Moon video, you stupid little bird.
But why do I gotta talk about Broken Moon? Can't I just leave it and do the rest?
You promised to talk about every map in the game, and that includes Broken Moon, whether you like it or not.
Stop beating around the bush and just talk about it already.
Fine! I'll talk about Broken Moon.
There you go.
This will be good for you, just like the cocaine.
I'll show you cocaine. Hello, and welcome to Broken Moon. I have explored and enjoyed every single map in Apex Legends, but this one's the only one that makes me go,
What is that? What the fuck is that?
but I made a promise to find the details in every single map in Apex, and I can't finish that until I go through this one. So today, we're ripping off that band-aid and taking a journey through the map of Broken Moon to find the story built into this map. And I promise I won't complain about it as I do so. Once upon a time, there was a vast group of people living on a planet called Boreas, a diverse culture of life that loved their planet and their moon, Cleo, a beacon in the night for their nations. Boreas found comfort in Cleo's soft light in the dark, until one night an asteroid streaked across the sky and impacted the moon of Cleo, shattering the celestial body into pieces. And then everyone on Boreas died. The end. Or at least that's what it would have been if the impact was realistic. Asteroids hitting moons is nothing out of the ordinary. The crater-filled surface of our moon is evidence of that. But an asteroid capable of breaking the bond of a celestial mass would have had so much power behind it that the impact alone would have wiped out all life on Boreas. Not to mention that the asteroid we see in the Seer stories from the Outlands is burning up before the impact. Not only was this the most powerful asteroid we've ever seen, but it also means Cleo's moon had an atmosphere it had to burn through first to even impact. Cleo tried to fight back, and the thought of that makes me almost feel bad for a giant sphere of rock. But since Boreas' people are still alive and the moon is still somewhat intact, we instead have to talk about what happened after the impact. Let's jump roughly 5 years forward. Cleo's still busted, but Boreas had mostly moved on, except for the frequent meteor showers, violent weather, tidal fluctuations, and rising temperatures in the poles. Other than all that, just fine. But since all those things were a bit problematic for the people of Boreas, the nations on the planet worked together to find the solution to the instability, and it led them back to Cleo. To fix their world, they needed to create a way of putting Cleo back together, to stabilize not just Boreas, but the moon as well. And all of that leads us here, the Colony of Hope, founded by the Cleo Recovery Council to begin terraforming the moon and bring the pieces of the shattered body back together. This map is the grand effort of the people of Boreas, a collaborative mission that in only 3 years made an entire region of Cleo habitable to live in. By all accounts, their efforts were a massive success. So why are the Apex games on the colony? Let's put a pin on that for a bit, because I want to showcase some of the things that the colony set up to make this terraforming possible, starting with the Terraformer. Here we have the heart of the operation in Hope, a machine specifically built to produce a form of planetary engineering, introducing all of the necessary pieces for the environment to become habitable. You know, microorganisms, bugs, Japanese cartoon prompts. Actually, this is based on a real fungus called octopus stinkhorn, or devil's finger. Fungi's a big theme with the plant life on the map, with another called Clathrus rubor scattered around too. Pretty neat. Terraformer gives us a good idea of the vibe early on in the colony's life. The posters especially tell it clear as day. This was seen as a massive thing by the people of Boreas, banding together to save their world. And to their credits, what Hope has achieved is the first in the Apex universe. The Terraformer is a first, but also the Atmos Station, which is the station built to redevelop the atmosphere that the asteroid wrecked. Both of these are milestones in technology for the Outlands, and unlike other major milestones we've seen, these ones haven't blown up. Hi, editing MooreOver here. I just want to point out at the top of the Atmos Station, there's some text on the ground that, I don't know if I'm missing something, but it doesn't look quite right. We'll be talking about these guys later, but I just wanted to point this out. It's really funny. They are such a huge development that we can even find magazines discussing them, alongside another major innovation, the Ziprails, a new form of transportation used by the colonists, where energized zip lines go all throughout the map and lead you to all sorts of different destinations. Okay, I need like 2 minutes to rant because, oh my god, Ziprails. Okay, so around the time of Broken Moon's release, we had this huge issue in the game known as third parties. You know, that thing where someone jumps on you when you're fighting another team and you have no way of reacting to it, and it's really fucking annoying to fight. You know that one? Yeah, you know that one. You know that one. You know that one. Third parties were such a fundamental problem that a major design change was made on Stormpoint to try and combat it. Jump towers were removed from the map, and instead we had gravity cannons, which let you go on a fixed path in one direction, not that far, but at least a little bit, so you got to go somewhere and feel like you were actually doing something. These were a change made to make third partying harder to do, and you know what? It worked, because Stormpoint was very hard to third party in. In fact, it was really hard to find a fight at all because of how fucking big it was. Stormpoint created this weird situation where you had one map that was really hard to get a fight in, and then another map where one fight started had 20 teams drop on your ass like you're the last cookie at a cookie convention. What? Cookie convention? What the fuck am I saying? So what we needed in the next map was balance. We needed something that didn't have as bad of a third party as the other maps, but didn't create such an isolating situation like on Stormpoint. What was our answer? Fucking Ziprails. These are zip lines scattered all across the map that give you a fast-paced version of a zip line to follow along. These Ziprails go all over the map, through chokes, through buildings, through POIs, everything, and they are so goddamn annoying! You can be 100% sure that there's only one team around you. Start the fight, get into a bit of a tussle, and then suddenly hear a Ziprail behind you with a full team ready to jump on your ass. Ziprails also come with the additional issue of creating a funnel that everyone follows along. If the only way to the zone is through a couple zipline paths, then everyone is going to converge on those one fast track lanes, which means everyone is going to pile up in small different areas and get into a giant fight, usually outside of the ring, usually dying, and usually rather boring for the one team inside the ring. Ziprails somehow take the worst of the gravity cannons and the jump towers and put them into one. They are narrow, they are limited in where you can go, but as soon as you use them, you can instantly get right wherever you need. And it's so goddamn annoying! You good? Yeah, I think so. Not gonna happen again? Nope. No, we still haven't shown how they are putting the moon back together. It's not fully explained, but we have a good theory for it thanks to the 2 other base facilities from the original colony, the Stasis Net Array and the Foundry. With all the debris floating around, the Stasis Array holds in place all of those loose rocks, preventing them from colliding with Boreas' surface. The Foundry then collects and breaks down these giant pieces of debris into smaller rocks that can naturally connect back onto Cleo by way of gravity. I got to learn about 2 things here at the Foundry. First, this is where the ferrofluid used by Catalyst and the colonists was manufactured, all the goop that holds things together around the map. Secondly, I learned about the machine they have at the center of this POI, a gyratory crusher, which is used to break down larger run-on mined rocks into smaller rocks and gravel. They do this by dropping the run-on into the top of the crusher, where the rocks then have to pass through an oscillating mantle to get to the bottom. And while it would be very funny to have me fall into the crusher right now, I'm not gonna do the same joke every video where the bird dies in incredibly stupid ways. This is so unoriginal. Ah! Now that we've seen how the colony got started, we can take a pin off of that question we asked. Why are the Apex games here? See, normally in this point of the video, I have to talk about something that went catastrophically wrong on the map that made everyone abandon it and the Apex games take over. But as far as I'm aware, nothing happened. It wasn't abandoned by its residents or its owners, and there's no catastrophic collapse we gotta talk about. This doesn't seem at all like a location that would end up becoming an Apex arena. In fact, we know it was still lived in right up until the first games were played. Catalyst lived on the colony in the location called Promenades. We don't need to mention that location. What matters is how did the Colony of Hope become an option for the games? See, the efforts on Cleo are headed by the Cleo Recovery Council, a council formed by the nations of Boreas and headed by a different organization, the Boreas Science Division. I'm not sure if the BSD are some form of United Nations science group or a private company, but they are in large part what funds and manages the operations on Cleo. And as far as I can tell, those funds were running out fast. After the initial boom of progress on Cleo, interest from the people of Boreas died down as weather conditions stabilized. There was no longer an immediate threat, and funding from the nations lessened as a result. The Cleo Recovery Council, however, needed more to keep the colony running. With no other options, the council moved to acquire new funding, this time from private investment. Enter the Kobinoi Group, a collection of private companies who run several facilities throughout the colony, namely the Production Yard and Breaker Wharf. Unlike any of the original colony locations, these facilities are not meant for the betterment of Cleo. These are for the harvesting and production of goods on the moon. The council gives out deeds to sections of the surface for private interest to use, in return for investment into the recovery effort. In other words, the moon of Cleo just became a gold rush. The Kobinoi Group is the main group we see on Broken Moon, but we also know the council accepted other forms of investment such as the core, the power generator for the entire colony that uses the core of Cleo to create energy, was not made by the council. It was made by the private company Powerizer, whose name makes me imagine they have a buff version of the Energizer Bunny as a mascot. If you thirst in the comments, I'm getting the bat. And I gotta say, all of these company buildings are just so impressive. They're just a great part of the development of Broken Moon, and why are they so big? In Apex, in general, you want to be able to, at a glance, know whether or not a POI you're about to enter is somewhere you should be aware of. Whether there's a fight going on, there's an enemy coming through, or whether or not it's just generally been looted. That makes the map design on a POI very important because you want to know whether or not there's someone there at a glance. This means to make a POI easy to understand at a glance, you have to make it easy to scope it out. Some of the ways you may see this is with a high ground, maybe the main area you play around is an open space. Buildings have obvious open windows and spaces to tell whether or not someone is running through them. These are all little easy bitty ways of doing it. But you want to know how you make that impossible? You want to know how you make it really fucking difficult to know whether or not someone is inside of a POI? You make it really fucking big! Command Center is a center POI on Stormpoint, and it's a great example of this. It's a very big POI that's fully enclosed in a mountain. If someone tries to enter, they have no idea whether or not someone's inside. If someone tries to leave, they have no idea what's going on around them. So it's really fucking hard to know whether or not there's something to be wary of. It's a very common problem brought up with the POI, and it comes up so often on Broken Moon. Production Yard is this giant lane building that as soon as you're inside of it, you really have no idea whether or not someone's about to walk into the building or not. Foundry is somehow completely open and completely enclosed at the same time. I really have no idea whether or not there's someone coming down the Ziprail, coming down the lane, or just coming to eat my ass. There is so much surrounding the center building of Atmos Station that you can often walk up to the center tower without ever realizing there was someone on the opposite end of the POI. And Terraformer, oh my god, Terraformer! You know what makes getting to the center of a POI really hard? Well, how about when it's a giant hill? You can run up right to the center building of Terraformer and not even know there's a fight going on half the time. You can be sitting around inside of the circular building and not even know that 3 more teams are about to jump on you. Have you ever finished a fight in Terraformer and then suddenly felt like you were defending the walls of Helm's Deep against the waves of enemies suddenly running up the hill towards you? I have. It's not fun. Right. Another company of note was Hammond Robotics, who are known to have worked on mining operations on Cleo. One such operation was the one Catalyst and her friend Margot tried to prevent from setting off for the moon. Though they probably should have planned it out a bit more, I feel like one bomb was underestimating things here. If we put aside the ethics of giving private companies control over the moon, which they did, the investments did do a lot to keep the colony running over the next few decades. It went from a base of functioning facilities to an entire community built upon Cleo. with several neighborhoods created to house all of the colonists that came in over those 20 years. There's actually something really nice about seeing all of these photos from the families and workers here on the moon. You get a real sense of the community that formed over their shared goals and hope for Cleo. You also realize that every family outing started with a zipline trip. All right, everybody, let's go visit Grandpa's house. The scientists behind the development of the moon had expanded their operations to agricultural life too. Both bionomics and cultivation feature hydroponic pods and research sites to study the local plant life. This would have been how the council decided what fauna in the region was safe for consumption, like these giant spiky eggs that grow on trees. This is entirely speculation, but I'm pretty sure these eggs are at least vaguely inspired from the African fruit, horned melons, which really makes me want to crack one open and eat the jelly inside. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. Do you see all the glass around these pods? If you've ever wondered why you can never see a reflection in the game, this glass shows why. Instead of trying to render a full reflection on glass surfaces, Apex cheats and uses a static image instead. By layering a matching image over the base materials of the glass, you can get this really nice reflection that isn't intensive to render. Of course, doing it this way means you can catch errors in the mirror image. This pane of glass in Bionomics clearly shows Boreas in full when there should be a building in the way, or how the core is inverted in this reflection. If you notice any other fun reflections like this in the game, please do share them in the Discord. I love finding these things. And finally, the Eternal Gardens on the west end of the map is the last major area from the prosperous period we've been talking about. A memorial dedicated to the tragedies created from the initial impact, as well as the achievement of bringing Boreas together to repair the damage. I love all of the different sculptures around the map, like the Prowler, the bird, Chunk. They really help bring this place to life. One interesting thing you can find in this location is a plaque in the center tower on the bottom floor. This plaque is part of the memorial and specifically mentions that it was paid for by the friends, families, and neighbors of Niku and Asteria. You may be wondering who Niku and Asteria are. What I can tell you is they're not people. They're two of the cities that were destroyed from debris after the asteroid. I still haven't answered why we're here, have I? The companies I mentioned earlier notably lack an important name. The Apex games. They weren't involved in the initial investment phase of Cleo, as far as we can tell. So what changed? Once again, enter Obi Adolasim, Seer. Obi's story is closely connected with Cleo, as he was born at the very same moment the asteroid struck the moon. He was seen as a cursed child born with the mark of the moth, doomed to guide anyone who follows him into flames. Despite his birth, Obi sought to rise above his fate and gained renown as a pit fighter before he joined the Apex games. Seer became quite the icon for Boreas, their star on the galactic stage. Even people on Cleo saw him as a symbol to look towards, as we see drawings of him inside some of the buildings. But this love wasn't shared equally. Many of the Boreas people saw Seer as someone who abandoned their home for a great stage. More unjustly, some still saw Seer as somewhat at fault for Cleo's destruction. Despite the unfair nature of it all, he sought to give back to his home and appease those discontented with him. Seer met with the commissioner of the Apex Games, Eduardo Silva, and requested that a new arena for the games be built on Boreas. With the Outland's most popular sport being played on his home planet, he hoped it would bring attention to the needs of Boreas and its moon. But Obi, unfortunately, never heard of a monkey's paw.
In breaking news, the Apex Games will be making their new home on the moon of Cleo.
Residents of the colony will be relocated from Hope to neighboring colonies on the moon's surface, or brought back to Boreas over the coming weeks.
Reports suggest that star Apex legend Obi Adolasim is responsible for the decision to move the games onto Cleo. The favor Seer had with the people of Boreas was lost when the still healing moon of Cleo had one of their staple colonies taken from them for use in a frivolous, destructive arena. Those that followed Seer, believing him to be the hope for Boreas, were burned for their belief. Like moths to a flame. One such person was Catalyst, a worker in the colony who, thanks to the games, was terminated from the council and forced to leave her home in the promenades. Oh shit, did you just say promenades? No, you don't get to talk about promenades! We're doing something serious here. You can't interrupt it with a rant. Promenades is the single worst POI in Apex Legends. The center POI of Broken Moon, a gigantic wall cutting through the middle of the map. There's lots of shops and amenities and apartments in this location, and it all makes me want to put my hand in a meat grinder. This wall cuts through the middle of the map and makes any attempt to move from one side of the map to the other have to contend with this one POI. You either have to go the long way around the mountain to avoid the POI, or you gotta cut straight through the middle of it to rotate. And when the zone is closing on your back, which one do you think most people pick? Everyone cutting through promenades eventually leads them here. And I swear, these two buildings have seen more action inside of them than Bonnie Blue. If you know, you know. Getting trapped inside of this hallway, on the platform, in the buildings, or anywhere around promenades is an inevitability. The Ziprails, the giant buildings, the weird layout, and this make Broken Moon easily the worst map in Apex Legends.
Dan, you shut up!
There's a really sad story happening, and all you can do is whine. Whine! Whine! Promenades isn't even in the game anymore. I'm sorry, I just had to. I should have known this video was a terrible idea. Anytime the stupid map gets brought up, we become insufferable. I can't handle it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I think we all have those maps in multiplayer games that annoy us for whatever reason we make up. It's an easy way of venting your frustrations in a game to blame the ground you're standing on, but it does run the risk of becoming irrational. For nearly 2 years, the #1 request I've had on this channel was to talk about Broken Moon, and I've avoided it because to me, Broken Moon was like that die-hard Hanzo main in Overwatch or a camper in COD. You just can't help but get irrationally angry every time you see it. I couldn't help but vent my frustrations about the map, and I knew I wouldn't be able to present the map fairly. Do you know how many people worked on Broken Moon? Actually had their hands on the map before it released? 42. 42 different people all spent over a year of their lives working on this map to bring it to life and to make it fun for us to play. At least according to senior art director Edoardo Agostini, who gave us a bit of information. The goal when building this map was to demonstrate those phases of development
and show how innovation and perseverance can change a landscape. From early lunar expeditions to advanced terraforming efforts to the private industry needed to fund such world-changing endeavors.
Working with the themes of heaven and hell, the team created a contrast between light and dark, a cold, barren alien wasteland that was the raw moon, versus a wild, terraformed landscape under a manufactured pastel sky.
Over the course of 18 months of development, Broken Moon came to light. During that time, we grew, learned, and bonded into an amazing crew. I'm very proud of this team, and I'm excited about what's coming next. These are all direct quotes from Mr. Agostini in his ArtStation post about the creation of Broken Moon. It features all of the different artists and creators involved, and you can read an entire story about how it came to life. I'll put the link to the ArtStation post in the description, and you'll be able to read it yourself. It's a fantastic read about the development of a map. Also, if any of the developers happen to have made it this far into the video, sorry. For all of my complaining about Broken Moon, I've really come to appreciate the map over the time I've spent exploring it, and I've even found that some of it is more compelling than the other maps I've enjoyed. Better yet, a lot of the complaints I've had about Broken Moon are pretty outdated. But to tell you that story, I'm gonna need some help. The colony was now gone, but the efforts on Cleo continued on. The mercenary syndicate manages the facilities on the newly named Broken Moon, while the council worked elsewhere. It wasn't the best ideal for everyone, but at least it was still here, until Season 21. As Alter made her debut into the Apex games, an unusual event saw an alternate dimensions version of Olympus appear above Broken Moon. This Olympus eventually made a collision with one of the stasis satellites around Cleo, knocking out the array and creating an opening for debris to fall down into Broken Moon. This destroyed the promenades, wrecked terraforming efforts, and catastrophically saw the former colonies separate from the celestial body. This was the largest change ever made in a map update, completely remaking Broken Moon with a whole new style, centered around its new center POI, Quarantine Zone. a far more flexible area to play around compared to promenades, and several new POIs were added that are not big. Ziprails are still annoying sometimes, but that's more of a me thing. I like all of these big changes, but they did come at a price. Broken Moon is now broken. Well, more broken? Extra Broken Moon. And despite the efforts of many, progress on Cleo will be set back for decades because of it. The best way I can describe Broken Moon's story in Apex is with 2 words: stifled hope. This beacon for the future of Cleo became marred by the choices made to keep the dream alive. From making deals with devils to keep the lights on, to giving up the colony when an unintentional request brought the games to their door. Hope's ideal became clouded after these choices, the people affected by them losing more for it. Originally, the title of this video was supposed to be in reference to the story itself, the tragedy of what happened here. But I honestly can't call it a tragedy. After the Olympus crash, the Cleo Recovery Council came back to the colony, working with the games to repair the arena and research what interdimensional debris was left behind. They're the ones that run Quarantine Zone and all of the new small POIs. Because of this, all is not lost on Broken Moon. And maybe, one day, the future that the people see for Cleo can still be realized. Like I said earlier, it's a stifled hope. Bittersweet, but not without opportunity. The title of this video is instead about me. The tragedy of how I treated Broken Moon. Had I not formulated such a harsh opinion on the map so early in my time playing it, I would have been able to appreciate more readily the story this map had to tell. Instead, my knee-jerk feelings about parts of it ruined the chance to learn about something I truly do enjoy. If it wasn't for the fact I was making this video right now, I wouldn't have ever learned this either. I still stand by my criticisms of Broken Moon, and applaud the update for the changes they made, but they didn't need to be a wall preventing me from engaging with it like I do any other map. And hopefully my mistakes can be a lesson. You can have grievances or criticisms of something in a game, but you shouldn't let those parts prevent you from enjoying the game to its fullest. And maybe along the way, you can appreciate those annoying parts too. So there, I learned my lesson. I will now never get irrationally angry at maps or other things in games ever again. Duh.